I have a 5-month-old daughter. My mother-in-law has been here easily over 30 times, and the only thing she wants to help with is either changing my daughter's diaper or bottle feeding her. We won't let her change our daughter's diaper because the one time she did, we didn't give her permission. She spent way too much time doing so. It really creeped me out. It doesn't take 10 minutes to wipe a baby. It bothered me on a very deep level. My husband was even uncomfortable. So we made a rule. No one changes our daughter but us. But the bottle issue, I strictly breastfeed. I have a pump. I do not use it. I have no reason to use it. She doesn't need to bottle feed my baby, but it really irritates her that I refuse. So she came here yesterday afternoon, just showed up, no call ahead, nothing. Said she was in the area. I was making dinner. She asks, "What are we having?" I tell her, "I only made enough for us, so I'm assuming you are eating whatever is at your place, because I'm tired of going without my portion, because she shows up and eats without even checking if I've eaten or eating my portions out of the fridge because she didn't know it was mine." She says, "Wow, okay," and walks off. Says to my husband, "Guess there's not enough to feed me," in a passive-aggressive tone. Well, my daughter had been fussing for a good 5 minutes at this point, and my husband was trying to soothe her while I finished up dinner. We alternate nights. My mother-in-law says, "Here, I will take the baby while you finish dinner. Claire can go pump real quick so I can get the baby settled." I'm so tired of this argument with her, so in the heat of the moment and being pissed she was here anyways, I slammed the spatula on the counter and said, "You're not feeding my kid. I'm not pumping for you. Bring it up one more time and I will be going no contact and you'll have very little to do with your granddaughter's life at all." I then take the baby, pass the spatula to my husband and walk into the back room and lock myself away. I could hear her arguing with my husband in the kitchen and then a door slam. Well, my husband came to the bedroom, knocked and said, "I kicked her out." And then I hear his footsteps walking away. I come out and he's angrily finishing dinner, so I just don't say anything. Well, he turns and says, "I will have you know that I'm fin done with this BS. I don't want her changing the baby but feeding her. Holy frick, you two act like damn children and I'm sick of being in the middle of it. Is it really that much of a freaking problem to pump so she can feed her one single time so I don't have to freaking hear it?" He then aggressively slams my plate down in front of me and storms off to his office and slams the door. He has since apologized and said he's just done with it and says he's going no contact with his mother, but his whole attitude has changed. He's distant now. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Good, because I'm done with this BS too. Your mother grossly oversteps boundaries, invites herself over without warning or invitation, eats my portion of the food, not yours, creeped us both out when she changed our daughter, constantly badgers me about pumping when she has repeatedly been told no, and still, you refuse to stand up to her and make me do it. So since I'm in charge of dealing with your mother, there is a new rule. Mother-in-law is no longer allowed to just show up or have a key to this place. If she is told no, she needs to respect it. If she can't, she will be put in timeout until she can show that the behavior is changing and she can respect our rules. We are the parents. It takes longer to pump than to breastfeed, is painful, and can lead to thrush if not properly disinfected. If you wanted me to pump so you could feed her and bond with her, that's one thing, but I'm not doing it for your mother when it is just quicker, easier, and less frustrating for our daughter to just feed her myself. When they're your breasts, you get to decide. I'm done being disrespected in my own home. I agree with your decision to go no contact with her and think it is a wise one. Comment 2. Okay, let's keep this reasonable. Hubby can spend hours attaching sucking, pinching, painful machines to his body part. And for full measure, they should be gone over with a cheese grater first. Anyway, he can do that for a few hours and then sterilize all the equipment afterward. And then he can have an opinion on you pumping. Not the idiot. I am so furiously angry for you. If she can't be trusted to change a diaper, she can't be trusted. Reddit loves saying it, but you have a husband problem here. He is willing to sacrifice not only your comfort, but your baby's safety so that he doesn't have to have conflict. Frick that shoot. I'm 100% all about equality in parenting, but there is no equality in breastfeeding. They are your freaking body part. He can shut the frick up, so can his mom, and they can both just get absolutely fricked for adding another chore on a new mom's plate. You should just go pump real quick. I'm too pregnant to read this. You aren't in the wrong. Protect your daughter and frick anyone who gets in the way of that. Now, for the update. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm still reeling from the events of the past 3 days. The tension between my mother-in-law, my husband, and me has escalated to a point I never imagined it would. After the spatula slamming incident, things cooled down for a night. My husband and I talked it out, and he seemed to understand where I was coming from. He even agreed that his mom's behavior was out of line. We went to bed with a fragile peace hanging in the air. But the next day, my mother-in-law showed up again, unannounced. This time, she brought a baby bottle with her, filled with some kind of formula. She said she'd read online that sometimes babies need supplements, and she wanted to be prepared. I was furious. I've read all about the benefits of exclusive breastfeeding, and I'm committed to it. I've never had supply issues, and my daughter is growing perfectly. It felt like a direct attack on my parenting. My husband, who had been working from home in his office, heard the commotion and came out. He saw the bottle in his mother's hand, and something in him just snapped. He grabbed the bottle, dumped the formula down the sink, and told his mother that she was overstepping her boundaries. She started crying, saying she just wanted to help and be involved. That's when the heartbreak hit. My husband, usually so calm and collected, broke down. He confessed that he felt torn between the two most important women in his life. He admitted that he had been feeling neglected since our daughter was born, that he missed our connection, and that his mother's constant presence was a reminder of the intimacy we'd lost. I was stunned. I had been so focused on my role as a mother that I hadn't noticed my husband's needs. We'd always been a team, but now there was a growing rift between us. The realization that I had contributed to his feelings of isolation hit me hard. We spent the rest of the day in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. My mother-in-law left quietly, and I could tell she was hurt too. It was a mess of emotions, and I didn't know how to fix it. Yesterday, my husband and I tried to talk it out. He said he understood my stance on breastfeeding, but wished I could find a compromise with his mother. He suggested maybe just once I could pump and let her feed our daughter, to give her that experience and maybe ease the tension. I was torn. Part of me wanted to mend things with my mother-in-law for my husband's sake, but another part of me was angry that I was being asked to compromise on something so important to me. In the end, I agreed to think about it. But last night, things took another turn. My mother-in-law came over again, this time with an apology. She said she'd been talking to some friends who told her she was being too pushy. She wanted to make amends. But then she saw the pump on the kitchen counter, the one I'd reluctantly set out while considering my husband's request. She took it as a sign that I'd agreed to her feeding the baby and immediately started setting it up. I walked in at that moment, and the sight of her touching the pump, assuming she'd won, was too much. I lost it. I told her that just because the pump was out didn't mean I'd made a decision. My husband heard the shouting and came in. He tried to mediate, but the damage was done. My mother-in-law left in tears, and my husband was furious that I'd exploded before we could present a united front. Now we're all at a standstill. My husband is barely speaking to me, and my mother-in-law hasn't been back since. The tension is thick, and I'm left wondering if I've ruined everything over my stubbornness. My husband's distance is palpable, and I'm scared that this might be the beginning of the end for us. My sister invites herself over and criticizes my home, so I set boundaries, but Mom steps in. Their next visit is a game changer. Last week on my day off, I am 26 years old and female. My mom and I arranged to spend some time together and bake some bread, since that is our new hobby together. I also want to mention that my mom and I don't ever get to spend time together since she runs a full-time business and I work full-time, and we haven't spent time alone together in years. My mom most often spends time with my sister, 30 years old and female, because my sister has 2 children and she wants to spend time with them. I don't get jealous because they are children, but I do miss my mom. My sister called me and invited herself to come with the kids. It is rare when they come over because my house is not baby-proofed. My one nephew, 5 years old, likes to play video games on my computer. My other nephew, 2 years old, is pretty much going through every drawer and cabinet in the house, and I'm trying to redirect him to a couple of toys he could have. During this time, I don't leave either kid unattended for more than a minute. The youngest is getting into everything, but I am getting no help from my sister. My mom and sister are sitting at the kitchen table talking and providing no assistance to me while I go back and forth between the kids. Eventually, I ask my sister to please watch the youngest. She isn't really watching him at all, and my youngest nephew goes into my bedroom. I don't let the kids go into my room because I have things like personal items and a safety item in my bedside table. I have a good reason for the item, and I lived alone for some time after an event. Stuff I can't get into. It's a long story, but everyone knows this in my family. I had my youngest nephew leave my room as his mom did not get him to leave. Back to the story. I hear my sister talking about my behavior because I seem annoyed and then grills me. I feel like I have to explain myself to everyone, even small children. I start saying I am overwhelmed. The kids are going through everything, and I am babysitting when this wasn't the plan for today. My sister starts telling the kids that I want them to leave and that I am essentially kicking them out. Shortly after, I texted my sister and apologized for my outburst and asked her to question me privately next time. I explained the item in my drawer and said that was a concern of mine that contributed to my overwhelm. She ignored me after reading my text for her for 2 days. She responded to my text a few days later, wanting an apology for my item and upset at a hypothetical situation. Anyways, I do not feel like I want to apologize because I shouldn't have to explain every item in my house, and I didn't sign up to babysit anyways. By the way, I bought a safe for my item. Also, I have my own house, and it is up to me how I run it, and I don't want to apologize for protecting myself. I feel like I could be the jerk for not apologizing about the item just to squash this. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Lock your bedroom door when anyone, especially kids, comes over. Your sister came over specifically so she didn't have to watch her own kids, not to see you. Every parent knows you watch your own kids in someone else's house and abide by the rules. Sister didn't like getting called out on her poor parenting. Tough for her. Comment 2. So it sounds like you have a gun in your house. You absolutely need to have it properly stored, check your local laws, and honestly, do not let your sister come over. This cannot be the first time you've realized she's going to burden her children onto you. That was clearly the reason she came over. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a wild couple of weeks since then, and I've got quite the update for you all. So after the whole incident with my sister and the kids at my place, things took an unexpected turn. Remember how I mentioned that my mom runs a full-time business? Well, she's been under a lot of stress lately, and it turns out she's been feeling guilty about not spending enough time with me. She called me up, and we had a heart-to-heart about everything that's been going on. My mom admitted that she's been so focused on helping my sister with the kids that she didn't realize how much I was missing our time together. She suggested a compromise that took me by surprise. She offered to set up a weekly girls' day where it would just be the 2 of us, no kids allowed. I was touched by the gesture and agreed, feeling like this could be a fresh start for us. But just when I thought things were looking up, my sister dropped a bombshell. She showed up at my house unannounced, kids in tow, and confronted me about the text I sent her. She was still upset about the whole situation and demanded an apology for making her feel like a bad parent. I was caught off guard, but I stood my ground. I explained to her that my home is my sanctuary and that I have the right to set boundaries, especially when it comes to the safety of everyone involved. I reminded her of the time when we were kids and she'd always respect my space, asking before borrowing anything from my room. I was trying to make her see that some things haven't changed. The conversation was tense, and there were a few moments when I thought it might turn into a full-blown argument. But then, out of nowhere, my mom stepped in. She had come over to discuss our upcoming Girls' Day and walked into the middle of our standoff. Mom did something neither of us expected. She took my side. She told my sister that while she understood her feelings, it was important to respect each other's boundaries. She also pointed out that as a grandmother, she had been enabling my sister's behavior by not encouraging her to take more responsibility for the kids. My sister was shocked. She had always been the golden child, and having our mom not take her side was a wake-up call. There was a moment of silence that felt like an eternity, and then my sister did something I never thought she would. She apologized. She admitted that she had been taking advantage of the situation and that she hadn't been fair to me. She promised to be more mindful of my space and to actually watch her kids when they were over. It was a huge relief, and I could feel the tension melting away. We decided to put the past behind us and move forward. My sister even agreed to the Girls' Day idea, saying it would give her a chance to have some time to herself while the kids were with their dad. Since then, things have been better. My mom and I had our first Girls' Day last week, and it was amazing. We baked bread, just like we planned, and talked about everything under the sun. It felt like we were making up for lost time. My sister has been true to her word, too. She's been more attentive to her kids and hasn't tried to impose on my space. She even bought some child-proof locks for her house, saying it was about time she made her place safer for the kids. But the real test came just a few days ago. My sister asked if she could bring the kids over for a visit. I was hesitant, but I agreed, setting some ground rules first. To my surprise, the visit went smoothly. My sister watched her kids like a hawk, and I actually got to enjoy their company without worrying about what they might get into. My family ignores my health issues to make me a surrogate for my sister, so I refuse, and they explode. But then an apology starts healing old wounds. I, 31-year-old female, have an older sister, Mary, 33-year-old female. Mary has always been the favorite. Growing up, my parents idolized her because of her looks, grades, athleticism, and more. She is described as my parents' golden apple baby. I, on the other hand, was born 2 years later. I was an accident. I was born prematurely with a heart condition. Growing up, I was in and out of the hospital, receiving countless surgeries. My parents always threw in my face that I was draining their money, even though my grandparents always paid for anything insurance didn't cover. She never hid her hatred towards me. She constantly bullied me, and my parents did nothing about it. When I graduated high school, I had enough. I begged my grandparents to pay for me to go to a college states away, just so I could get away from her. That was the best decision ever, because that's where I met my now husband, Greg. Greg was a sweetheart. He always made me feel beautiful, no matter what size I was. After graduating, we ended up getting married, in which his family paid for, because my parents refused, stating they spent too much on my sister's wedding a year prior. They didn't even bother to attend the wedding. We ended up choosing to live in the city we graduated in. I rarely talked to my family back home outside of my grandparents. Greg and I later would have a son together. This was a high-risk pregnancy. I was advised to terminate early on as the results could be fatal. Luckily, we both made it. I almost didn't, though. The amount of strain it put on my heart was detrimental. I was strongly urged by doctors to not have any more children, and we agreed. Fast forward to about 1 month ago, my family and I moved back to my hometown after my grandpa's health was declining and I wanted to be near him. As soon as I moved back, my parents and sister started acting very nice to me. My mom would ask me how I was doing and tell me how proud she was of me, which is something she never does. My sister would join and do the same. I knew something was up, but my grandmother said to give them a chance and maybe they missed me. 2 weeks later, I was invited to my parents' house for family dinner. While at the table, my sister said she had a present for me. She whipped out a card and I opened it expecting it to be an apology letter. But no, to my surprise, it was a letter stating that my sister found out she's infertile and congratulating me on becoming her surrogate. I was floored. I told her that I cannot have her baby. I tried to explain what my pregnancy did to my body with my heart, and she started crying. My parents began screaming at me for being selfish and not wanting to help out my sister. I explained that doctors instructed me not to, but they said for family, you take risks. I couldn't believe it. I grabbed my husband and stormed out. I can't help but feel bad still. So Reddit, am I the idiot for not wanting to be a surrogate for my sister, risking my health in the process? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, and congratulating me on becoming her surrogate. Whoa, so NTA. You wouldn't be the AH even if you were completely healthy. You don't need to explain. You were doing well without your parents and sister. I think you can go back to doing well without them again. If they really need a surrogate, they should be able to find someone who does it for hire. Comment 2. I think this post is likely a fake rage bait troll post because, seriously? No legitimate physician is going to participate in a surrogate pregnancy with a woman who has a heart condition and has been warned not to have another child. They just aren't. The risk and liability are too high. But in case it's real, your family is insane. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 3 months since I last posted about the news my sister Mary dropped on me, expecting me to be her surrogate despite my serious health issues. Well, buckle up because a lot has happened since then. After that disastrous family dinner, things got really tense. My husband Greg and I were bombarded with calls and messages from my parents and Mary, each one more guilt-tripping than the last. They tried everything, from sweet-talking to outright anger, to convince me to change my mind. It was relentless. Greg, bless his heart, was my rock. He shielded me from most of the drama, handling the calls and firmly telling them that my health was our priority. He reminded me of how we almost lost each other during the birth of our son, and that was a risk we couldn't take again. His unwavering support made me fall in love with him all over again. But then, the unexpected happened. Mary showed up at our doorstep, tears streaming down her face. She apologized for everything, from the way she treated me growing up to the recent surrogate debacle. She confessed that her infertility diagnosis had hit her hard, and she let her desperation cloud her judgment. I was taken aback. This was the first time Mary had ever shown any real remorse for her actions. We had a long emotional conversation where she shared her struggles. I learned that behind the facade of the perfect life, Mary had been dealing with her own demons. Her marriage was on the rocks, and her infertility felt like the final blow. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Despite our rocky past, she was still my sister. In the weeks that followed, Mary and I started to rebuild our relationship. We'd meet for coffee, take walks, and slowly I began to see a different side of her. She was trying, really trying to be better. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a sister, not a rival. But just as things were looking up, life threw another curveball at us. My grandpa's health took a turn for the worse, and he passed away. It was a devastating loss for our family, especially for me. He had been my champion, the one who always believed in me and supported me through everything. The funeral was tough. My parents were there, of course, and it was the first time we'd all been together since the surrogate incident. There were awkward moments, but we managed to get through the day with a semblance of unity for Grandpa's sake. After the funeral, my parents approached me. They were more subdued than I'd ever seen them. They apologized for their behavior, admitting that they had let their desire for grandchildren blind them to the danger they were asking me to face. It was a conversation I never thought we'd have. It didn't erase the past, but it was a start. Now here's where things get really crazy. A couple of weeks ago, Mary announced that she and her husband were getting a divorce. It was a shock to everyone, but Mary seemed almost relieved. She said that the infertility issue had brought to light how different their goals and values were, and that it was better for them to part ways now. And then, just when I thought there couldn't be more surprises, Mary dropped another bombshell. She had started seeing someone new, someone who was supportive of her situation and who didn't see her infertility as a deal breaker. They were taking things slow, but she seemed genuinely happy. As for Greg and me, we've been focusing on our little family and cherishing every moment with our son. We've also been discussing adoption as a way to grow our family without putting my health at risk. It's a big step, but we're excited about the possibility of giving a child a loving home. So that's where we are now. Things are far from perfect, but there's a sense of healing that I never thought possible. Mary and I are cautiously rebuilding our relationship. My parents are trying to make amends, and Greg and I are looking forward to the future, but it's bittersweet. Grandpa's absence is felt every day, and I can't help but wish he could see the changes in our family. His passing reminded us all of how short life is and how important it is to hold on to the ones we love, despite our flaws and past mistakes. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.